Today on our 2014 Honda CR-V, we're going to be taking a look at and installing the Roadmaster taillight wiring kit for towed vehicles, part number RM-152-LED. Now our Roadmaster LED light kit is going to allow us to have all the necessary lights when we're flat towing our car behind a motorhome and still be able to signal the drivers behind us whether we're stopping or turning, making sure that we're safe. The nice thing about these lights is it completely bypasses your vehicle's original lights. As you can see in here, we have a separate light from our factory bulb. Now the reason why this is great is because we don't have to worry about overloading our vehicle's electrical system or any kind of warranty issues that may arise. Now the LED bulbs that we're going to use, they burn brighter, last longer, and activate faster than incandescent bulbs. So we know that with these LEDs, they're going to last us a long time and they generate less heat than incandescent bulbs, so we don't have to worry about any damage that might occur to our taillight housing. Now to get these installed, we are going to need to drill a 1-inch hole in the back of our taillight assembly, and we need to make sure that we have enough room to get it into our taillight assembly. Now we are going to have to run a wire from our taillights to the front of our vehicle, and they do provide us with plenty of wire to get all that done. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's show you how we get it installed. To begin our installation, we're going to come to the back of our vehicle and we're going to need to remove our taillights. So we can go ahead and open up our hatch. And on each side, we're going to have 3 fasteners that we're going to have to remove. Now I'm going to be using an 8mm socket to remove these 3 fasteners. Now if we come to our taillight, and we get a firm grip on it, we're going to pull straight back. Give it a little wiggle while we're pulling. Now we can go ahead and remove all of our lights and harnesses coming off. So if we push this small tab here, it'll unlock and we can pull our connector off. Now we're going to set this aside for right now. And we're also going to remove our upper taillight section right here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to give it a little wiggle and it'll release it. With that loose, we can come back to our final light here. And again, pushing on the tab, we can disconnect it. And we're actually going to have to get a flathead screwdriver and take the clip off here. Now if we come up underneath this tab here, we lift up slightly and push away from our taillight, we can slide that clip off. Now we have access to our taillight. Now with our taillight out and all of our lights disconnected, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. So if we come to the back of our taillight, we're going to need to find a spot to mount our LED light. And I think in between this light and this vent hole here should be a good spot, just right in between. So I'm going to take a marker, I'm going to mark the center point. I'm going to drill a pilot hole to start with, and then I'll come back with a 1-inch hole saw. I just want to mention to be extremely careful when you are drilling. You want to go slow and very light pressure because you don't want to come through and bust the red lens on your taillight. Now I can complete it by coming back with that 1-inch hole saw, and again you just want to go slow with very light pressure. That way you don't have to worry about damaging the outside of your taillight. Now to clean all the debris off and some of the plastic shavings that got inside my taillight, I'm actually going to take my shop vac and in the blower section, I'm going to blow air in so it'll clean it all out. Now we're going to bring our attention to the light and socket that we have. Now we're going to have these small tabs going all around the light. Now we're going to take either a flathead screwdriver or pick, something small that you have. And we're going to come underneath. We're going to bend these tabs out slightly. And that's what's going to make contact and grip our housing to make sure the light doesn't fall out. So we're just going to go around bending them all out just a little bit. And then we're going to check the fit on our taillight housing itself, see if we need to make any adjustments, bend them out more, or possibly bend them in to make clearance. So we're going to take our light, we're going to pull on it. It's a little loose, but it fits pretty well. So I may want to come back and bend just a few of the tabs out so it has a little more pressure to hold it in. Now we're just going to keep bending the tabs ever so slightly till we get a nice snug fit. Now it may take a few tries to get it seated exactly how you want it, but you want to make sure that that light and socket have a nice firm grip and it's not going to fall out. With our bulb and socket in place, I'm going to come back with a little bit of silicone. If you don't have any, you can pick some up on our website using part number LT37467. Now, I'm just going to take a little bit of silicone. I'm going to go around the edges and help seal it up. Now you can use whatever you have available, whether it be a screwdriver, your finger, pretty much anything, just to make sure that the silicone is going to make a nice contact and spread evenly throughout the socket, hitting all the edges. And I do want to mention, you don't want to put any silicone. There's a small hole here at the base of our bulb. That's a vent hole for our bulb. Now we don't want to fill that up with silicone. We just want to go around the edges, get a nice seal. Now that we have one assembly done, we're going to go in and repeat that same process on the other taillight. Now we already have our fascia off because we were installing our base plate. It'd be a good time to run your wires. Now we're going to be using a 6-pole connector here. We're going to be using this connector in conjunction with our lights and wires. Now you can pick this up along with the cord that it connects to your RV using part number RM-146-7. Now you can use any connector that you have available. You can either use a 4-pole or the 6-pole like we're using here. Now we're going to mount this right here, but before we do, we're going to need to wire the back of our plug up. So I'm going to take my dust cover, I'm going to slip it over my wires, and just let it hang for now. Now we need to take a look at the different letters and markings on the back of our plug, and we can figure out which wire goes where. Now if we look at this port right here, it says GD, that's going to be our ground, and we're going to put our white wire in there. We're going to loosen up this set screw, just using a small Phillips head screwdriver. Now we can take our white wire, and we're going to take the bare end and we're going to put it down into our connector. Then we can go ahead and tighten down our set screw. Now if we move over to the one that says LT, it's going to be for our left turn signal. And go ahead and loosen that screw up. Now for our left turn signals, we're going to be using our yellow wire. Now our green wire is going to go into the one that's labeled RT for right turn signal. And then finally our brown wire is going to go into the top one that's marked TM for trailer marker, or your marker lights or clearance lights, running lights, whatever you want to call them. Now whenever I'm working with electronics, I always like to put a little bit of dielectric grease on my connections. Now if you don't have any, you can pick some up on our website using part number 11755. Just going to take a little bit, I'm going to go around all my connections, and then finally I can put my dust cover back on. Just slide it right over. Now we can go ahead and mount our plug right here, and we can begin to run our wire. Now they provide us with a couple self-tapping screws. We'll be using an 8mm socket to put those in. Now on the back of my plug here, to help protect it from some of the heat and anything else that may happen, I'm going to wrap a little bit of my dust cover along with several inches of wire with some electrical tape. That way it has a little bit more protection. Now we're going to need to run our wire all the way back to our taillights. Now generally speaking, you're going to want to go from here, go into your engine bay, and then go down and back. The reason being you don't want to go straight from here is there's a lot of heat sources and moving parts. So I'm going to go ahead and run my wire and then I'll show you how I got it done. So I ran my wire from my plug and I came right underneath my headlight, went into the engine bay, went around my battery, came around my air box, and I went down right here. Now my wire dropped down just right behind my axle, and I took these covers off and I ran my wire underneath my covers. And it came out right here by my fuel tank, and then went up and over the rear axle, and I have it coming down right here. Now we're going to remove this panel right here, and that'll give us access to run our wire up and up to our taillights. Now we're going to have 4 push-pin fasteners. If we take a flathead screwdriver, we can pop out the center section, which will take the tension off, and then we'll be able to take out the whole clip. Now you're going to have one on each end and then one towards the center here, as well as one on the very corner here, and then we'll have a few bolts to take out after that. Now if we come to the front of this cover, right behind our rear axle, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 bolts. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket to remove these. Now that we have access up through our bumper so we can get to our taillights, I'm going to take a piece of airline tube that I had lying around. You can use anything you have, whether it be a coat hanger, piece of airline tube, anything that's going to keep its structure when we feed it down from the top, feed it down to the bottom. That way we can attach our wire and pull it up. Now we're just going to take our airline tube, we're just going to go straight down. You can actually see the ground if you look from the top here, so we know that we have a straight shot from underneath our car. So here's where our airline tube came out. Now we can go ahead and start running our wires up. Before we do, we're going to need to split these wires apart so we can run the left side to the left and the right side to the right. So you can take a pair of cutters and right in between the wires you just want to make a small snip, being extremely careful trying not to cut the wires. And then once we have a small slit, we can just start pulling it apart and separating our wires. Now you're going to want a decent amount. You don't have to go all the way back to the bumper, but you want enough to at least have enough room so you can reach each side of the car. Now that we have our wires separated, I'm going to take my brown, yellow, and white wire. I'm actually going to tape it to the end of my airline tube. We don't have to worry about it letting go or falling through when I start pulling it up. Now that we have our wire up, we can take our airline tube and we can take our green wire and we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. These are the butt connectors that come in our kit, but I'm going to be replacing them with some heat shrink butt connectors. And these blue ones are going to be for 14 to 16 gauge wire. You can pick some up on our website using part number DW05744-5. Now these yellow ones we'll be using when we start to double up some wires, and these are 10 to 12 gauge heat shrink butt connectors. And you can pick some of these up on our website using DW05745-5. Now we have a good amount of wire here, a lot of excess wire, so I am going to leave myself some room, but I am going to cut this off. Now we're going to strip back the end of our yellow wire. Then I'm going to take my blue butt connector I'm going to crimp it into place. Now we can bring our attention to our tail light. I'm going to take my red wire and I'm going to attach it to the butt connector on the other end with my yellow wire. Now if we come to our brown wire, again, I'm going to leave myself a little bit of slack. I'm going to cut off the excess wire, and we will be reusing the brown wire. We can strip off the end. And this time we're going to be putting a yellow butt connector on. But we're also going to be using part of the brown wire that we just cut. So we're going to strip the end off of the excess wire that we just cut off our brown wire here. We're going to take both wires. We're going to put them together in one end of our butt connector. Now we're going to take our tail light and we're going to connect our butt connector to the brown wire on our tail light. Now we're going to come to our white wire, and again, giving ourselves a little bit of room, we're going to cut off the excess wire, and we will be reusing this section as well. So we're going to take the wire that's still attached and the loose wire, and we're going to strip both ends. Now we're going to take a yellow butt connector, and just like our brown wire, we're going to attach both of our white wires together and crimp it into one end of our butt connector. Now we can strip the back of our final wire on our black one. We're going to connect it to the two white wires that we just put in. Now we're going to take the brown and white wires that we have loose that are attached to our butt connectors, and we're going to route them back down through our bumper, and we're going to need to run them over to our passenger side. So now that we have all our wires ran over to our passenger side, I'm going to give myself a little bit extra room, cut off the excess green wire. Now we're going to strip it back. And we're going to crimp on a blue butt connector. Now we're going to attach the other end of this to our red wire on our taillight housing. Now if we move on to our brown wire, I'm going to go ahead and cut this, cut the excess off, and strip back the end. Now we're going to be taking another blue butt connector. Now we're going to be attaching this to the other end of our brown wire on our taillight. Now my white wire, I don't have a whole lot of wire here left, but I am going to give myself anywhere from 6 to 8 inches or so, but still being able to connect to my tail light, because we will need to use this small portion of wire here later. So we're going to strip back the end of our white wire, and we can go ahead and strip the free end of our loose wire here as well. Now we're going to take both of these ends and we're going to connect them together, and we're going to put it in one end of our yellow butt connector. Now the end that's going to go in here is going to be our black wire that's attached to our taillight. So we can go ahead and strip back the end on our black wire. Put it into our butt connector and crimp it down. Now the free end of our wire here, we're going to strip that end back as well. And we're actually going to put on the provided ring terminal onto the end of there. Crimp it into place. Now we just need to find a good mounting point for our ground. Now we just need to find a spot that's out of the way, that's not going to interfere with our tail light, but still has a metal surface to make contact with. So right here where my taillight meets the body of the car seems like it'd be a good spot, nice and out of the way. And actually I'm going to tuck it underneath these wires. I'm actually going to go down here. That way I know I'm not going to interfere with the mounting of my taillight. I'm just going to take the self-tapping screw that's provided in our kit and a 5/16 nut driver and put it into place. Now, I did mention that these are heat shrink butt connectors, so I'm going to be using a heat gun to shrink them down. But I just want to mention that if you're using an open flame such as a lighter or a torch, you want to be extra careful not to char the wires or the connector itself. Now that we have our lights wired up, all we have left is to put our taillights back in place and button everything up. Now I'm going to tie my wires up. Just do want to mention, we do have wires coming from our driver's side over to our passenger side, and we have our exhaust right here, so we want to make sure that it's tied up high enough and away from the heat sources or any moving parts that we won't have to worry about our wires getting damaged. So put a few zip ties securing my wire out of the way, then I can put my cover back in place. So here I have my tester plugged in, that way we can make sure before we put everything back together all the way that our lights and our wires are working properly. Which they are. Now I can see my left turn signal or my left brake signal. You can see it's working there. Now my right brake and right turn signal. As you can see, it's working there. And that'll finish up our look at the Roadmaster taillight wiring kit for towed vehicles, part number RM-152-LED on our 2014 Honda CR-V.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at eTrailer.com.